What's up, everybody? Brad Montgomery. Oh, I'm excited. Singer, songwriter, producer, award-winning musician, celebrity. Gordon Chambers is in the house. Gordon, how are
Hey,
you?
Fred. Wonderful. How are you?
I've been looking forward to this interview for so long, Gordon. This weird podcast thing has been honestly an excuse to call people I wanted to talk to anyway and finally have a reason. I am dying to catch up with you.
Cool. Well, here we are. Let's do it.
Well, let's get started. You and I met at Brown University. What year did you graduate?
I was class of 1990.
1990. Since then, I've been stalking you recently. Since then, you have been killing it. I had a general concept, Gordon, that you were just rocking the music business. But then when I started Googling you, it was kind of like this. Holy crap, this guy's the boss. It's worked. So let's just talk. I want to go through a couple things. So you're a songwriter. You're written for Aretha Franklin, Whitney Houston, Beyonce, Brandy, Trace, Usher, Jamie Foxx, Gladys Knight, Chaka Khan, and you're a performing artist. And you've
Yes.
played in the Kennedy Center, Essence Music Festival, the White House. You are one of that tiny percentage of the people, Gordon, who say, I want to be a professional musician. And you made it.
Wow. I never really think about it that way. I really don't. But thank you for putting that perspective on it.
Well, there must be some realization that you're in a really hard biz.
Yeah. I mean, it is a really hard business, and because it's a hard business, and you're in the business, you're always trying to think about surviving in the business, and pivoting and branding and rebranding and focusing and rolling with the punches of the business. So it's just nice that you framed it. You've reminded me that just to be in it is a dream come true in a lot of ways. Sometimes I really need to hear that.
Well, right, yeah, in some ways, you're just kind of forget the amazing and ridiculously long list of credentials. You're making a living in a business that people quit to go get an easy job. And by easy job, something with benefits and something where someone tells them when to show up and when to not show up. And you know what you're going to do tomorrow and you know what you're going to make next month. That's not true for you.
That's true.
When
That
was
is
your...
actually true.
Go ahead, brother.
No, you go ahead.
Well, we were together at Brown, and at some point, you got a break. It had to be. I don't know what was next. Like, when did you first start realizing, like, I must be good? They're hiring me.
I after Brown, I left and took a very, very low paying job at this magazine called Essence. It's a Black women's popular, very popular culture, fashion magazine. And my father was furious that I was going to be earning so low of a salary. But, he let me live at the house. I didn't have to really pay rent. I had to pay my phone bill because I was always on the phone. And, he still was very supportive. And I just felt like it was a good place for me to be and to network, to sort of be in the mix. And while I was there, I met Queen Latifah in my Essence capacities. And I interviewed her for the magazine, actually, because I started doing some writing, some journalistic writing and editing for the magazine. My last post there was entertainment editor. It was a glam kind of a post. It took me,
Yeah.
I mean, I went to go pick up Quincy Jones one time in the limousine and hang out for the day with him because he was coming to New York to receive an award that we were giving him. So I got to meet amazing people, there. And not all of those relationships necessarily led to songwriting relationships, but I didn't meet many people and executives that knew me, and I became sort of associated with a very credible brand, and it definitely helped me to interface. But Queen Latifah is somebody that I did interview for the magazine. And she said, "Are you a musician?" And I said, "Why do you ask?" And she said, "You know, it's just something about you. I want to hear your music." So because she asked me, I actually sent her a cassette tape. This was way before MP3s. This is like the cassette tape days. So I actually sent her a cassette, and she called me back and she said, "I really like what I hear. And can we, you know, explore some ideas together?" And we ended up writing a song together that she put on one of her albums. So that was kind of the first big break of a really big marquee celebrity name, you know. But the people who really, more so, I would say, put me on the map and really put me in the mix of being like a songwriting partner to them, because they were really working. Oh, excuse me, sorry about that. Wintertime, New York. They were like working producers in New York, and they needed lyricists for, you know, names that are not as well known, but names like Dave Hall, an amazing producer, Barry Eastman, and also amazing music producer. They like really had artists coming in and out of their studios all the time, and they needed lyricists. And so I, you know, through networking, met one person, met me to another person, and then once I was introduced to those two producers, they were like, "Okay, you're good, and you can really write quickly. You can sort of imitate voices. You can sing. You can lay these demos, and you know how to like say, okay, if we want to write a song for such and such a person, because I have this person coming in, can you write something with this voice in mind?" Yeah, I could be a helpmate to them. I could sing backgrounds. I could do background arrangements. And once they started having the artists come in, I could be in there and help coach, vocal coach or vocal produce the session. So it's really a lot of names that are not, I mean, a lot of people sort of associate me when they say, "Oh, Gordon Chambers has written for this one and this one." But really and truly, my music career was more so pivoted and put on the map by producers who are not mainly as well known, who are good friends to this day, many of whom are very good friends to this day. Yeah. Well, the business is like that. It's often people who are not as well known, you know, to the public eye, are the ones who really make it happen. And you know, they're the sort of the unsung heroes of really any business, you know. I'm reading Andre Leon Talley's biography now, who also went around way before us, and it's interesting to hear him. He's often just solely, you know, associated with Anna Wintour, but, you know, because of all the years he was involved. But there were so many other people that he worked, you know, with or for before he got Vogue, you know. So I can relate to that, because it's always those more unknown entities and names. Yeah.
Well, it's similar to my business. So I'm a professional speaker, and I had no idea, and no one outside of the business knows, there's this whole army of people who are doing well kind of under the radar. And there's a huge industry there that no one really knows about. And I hadn't really thought about that. The musicians who are doing great work, but they're not Whitney Houston.
Yeah. But there's producers, there's engineers, there's A&R people, there's assistants to A&R people, there's production company. There's a whole wing of people who, you know, were really pivotal in my life that I'm very grateful for. Music publishers. You know, I got a music publishing deal when I was a known songwriter, but this woman named Kat Jack signed me to Paisley Park Prince. Prince had started a publishing company. She signed me to Paisley Park Publishing. I didn't even know what a publishing deal was, you know? So, you know, I have to really call all those names, you know, out loud when I do interviews like this.
Well, let's go. I want to go way back to how you got into this, because I was very lucky at Brown, where I get to sit behind you when you were holding forth. So we were, can't remember the name of the group, Gordon Chambers and something.
Jazz Giants.
Jazz Giants. All right. And so that was super fun for me. I don't remember ever playing a Gordon Chambers song. I don't remember you singing a song, lyrics by Gordon Chambers. Did you? When did that happen?
I wasn't singing live, you know, in the singing that I did in the jazz stuff at Brown, either with the smaller group or with the jazz band, you know, it was mostly jazz standards, because I really wanted to be that's what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a jazz singer. I mean, my idols were Al Jarreau and Diane Reeves. That's what I wanted to do. And when I first got out of Brown, I first got to New York, I started hanging out with the jazz people. Like Roy Hargrove and I used to run the streets. We became very good friends. Rodney Kendrick, jazz pianist, who was Abby Lincoln's pianist, who is now actually Rhonda Ross, who's Diana Ross's daughter. But Rhonda and Tracy both went to Brown. They were younger than I. She's Rhonda's husband. I mean, he's Rhonda's husband, Rodney Kendrick, Roy Hargrove. I used to hang out with Abby Lincoln quite a bit, and sort of her band. So I was hanging with these jazz folks. But I was also writing songs, just kind of like more as a hobby. Like I always loved to write, but I didn't know that was going to be the necessarily the focus. Even when I got out of Brown, I was, writing magazine articles, for places, not just for the magazine I worked for, but I wrote, some magazine articles for the New York Times, for Rolling Stones, for The Source, about music. I did some acting. I was just doing any and everything to be creative in any relationships that I could find. But I ended up happenstancing. Is that a word?
It is now.
I happenstanced on this community of producers and production companies that needed lyrics. And, there was a lot of hip hop producers that needed people that could add chords to their beats and add lyrics. And I had those skill sets, even though it wasn't necessarily what I was primarily focused on. I had what they needed. There was an industry around it. There was an infrastructure. There was A&R. There was record companies. There was a lot of money, in the 90s R&B scene in New York. There was Uptown Records. There was executives. There was a scene. And I just happened to happenstanced into that scene. And I went with it. I rolled with it. It was fun. I started making money doing it. I started making a name for myself doing it. And it was never the only thing that I wanted to do. But, when you start doing something and you start to sort of build a brand around it, it takes on a sort of a life of its own, And later on in life, I've been able to actually explore other things that I also wanted, to do. But you're absolutely right. At Brown, I really wasn't singing that much original music. I was in another group, those Shades of Brown, which was more like an R&B ensemble. And I used to sing some of my original songs in that setting. But as a performer, I didn't really start doing as much performing of my original material. Like sometimes in my early shows in New York, a song or two here or there that was more jazz oriented. But really, I didn't start that more so until the release of my first solo albums, which I released independently, which came much later, after probably 10 years of solid songwriting and producing for like some of the artists that you went to. And, quite a few, thank the Lord, hit songs, R&B hit staples like If You Love Me for Brownstone, which was Grammy nominated. I apologize for Anita Baker. Today's Anita Baker's birthday, actually, which was a Grammy-winning song in 1994, and then Missing You from Set It Off, which was featured by Brandy, Tamia, Gladys Knight, and Chaka Khan, that was also Grammy nominated. And then I, for Angie Stone and Deborah Cox. So after about 10 solid years of that was when I was like, I think I want to get back to my solo. I got that solo mojo again, like that singing mojo came back.
Right.
To my spirit. And actually a session with Whitney, she was very inspirational in that particular session. And I think that she could also just feel, just the same way Queen Latifah was like, do you write music? Like, it was kind of like, do you want to sing? It's like, she just kind of felt that essence in me. And that's when that was that nudge that I got, that I wanted to, get back to that side of myself. And when I made my first solo albums, it was very jazzy. Like it's introducing Gordon Chambers album has a lot of live instrumentation, some amazing musicians. Raymond Andrew, who's a fabulous jazz, R&B and jazz pianist, played most of the live keyboards. Roy Hargrove collaborated, rest in peace, my friend. Played on a cut on that. Mike Phillips, this amazing saxophone player. I called in, I did some stuff that was more straight R&B, but I did also do quite a bit of I would say, I wouldn't say jazz, but acoustic, neo-soul-y sophisticated jazz, R&B, I guess. That was when I sort of wanted to dip back into that side of myself.
Right.
You know, so I've kind of returned to it circuitously, I would say.
Gordon, I'm so interested in people's kind of origin story. Sure. And I'm also related to how those stories relate to personal confidence, because, you know, we both can agree that no matter what profession you're in, if you're confident, you seem to be better at it.
Yeah.
And I remember I'm going to tell you a story about you, and you come off pretty good. So you and I at Brown our combo won some sort of award, and we were at a jazz festival with. Those other combos were better than we were. They were grad students. They were people who were going to, you know, have masters and PhDs in music. And here we are, a bunch of undergrads. And I was so psyched out, Gordon, listening to them warm up. And they were playing music that was kind of out there for me. Like, I don't even understand what the hell they're doing, much less am I able to play like that. And I think I told you, like, Gordon, I'm psyched out or whatever. And you said, Brad, whether or not they are good has nothing to do with whether we are good. And you smiled and you just beamed this confidence. And I'm like, hell yeah, I want to be like Gordon. And I have quoted you to my kids that, you know, because I just see you as this guy who's able to stand in front of our combo and do something scary, which is sing and play. You're an amazing trumpet player. And then you just would hold the room in between songs, chatting. And I see that confidence as huge. Yet, here comes the question. Mm-hmm. I heard you talk just now, and when I was stalking you a little bit, you mentioned that when you were mostly being a writer, I think it was Whitney Houston who said, you want to be a musician. Mm-hmm. There was something missing. There was some lack of confidence that Whitney helped push you over the edge.
She did.
So I just see this contrast between this uber confident, amazing Gordon, and you still needed, like the rest of us, someone to say, "Hey, Gordon, you're good enough."
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and you're absolutely right, and I'll tell you where that comes from. The music business, once you get in the business of music, there's clicks and there's brands and there's like, okay, it's kind of like, and that's good and bad. Like you sort of become associated with like, you're that guy that does this thing.
Right.
And so once I sort of made it, you know, as an R&B lyric top line guy, you know, writing these award-winning hit songs, even though I sang the demos on all the songs, and even though like I sang even duets on platinum albums, you know, and was featured in music videos and everything, there was still this perception by the major labels that Gordon is not a singer. He's a writer.
Right.
You do that. You stay and do that. That's what you need to be doing. And when the powers that be embraced me as that, it became like, not wanting to push my own agenda, because it's like a way of not biting the hands that feed in a way. And so I went with it. And, you know, I was offered a couple of record deals, and, you know, politics of the label, the deals didn't work out, you know, at the last, like you get close, but so far. So I kind of had put the dream aside, but being Whitney Houston and being just not just astoundingly talented and you know, world iconic person, but in a really big sisterly, sweet, kind, and inspirational, friendly way, spoke to my heart and spoke to my spirit and uplifted me. And she was very inspirational and very intuitive as a spirit and as a person, as a human being. And she spoke to my heart, you know, and then I just decided that I said, you know what, I'm going to put all this other stuff on aside. You know, my dream, being from New Jersey, of all the artists I ever wanted to work for, she was the one that I most absolutely wanted to write for. That was the dream come true. Even though I had written bigger songs than the ones I created with her, she was the mountain to climb. And once I got in that room and she affirmed me in that way, that's when it just made sense to me. I put all the other industry pigeonholing or disappointment or all of that other stuff into context. And I just was like, let's do this. You know, and I started working on my solo album. I went way over budget. I actually, you know, ended up taking a second mortgage on my house to actually finish the recording the way that I wanted to, you know, to mix it properly and do the, you know, kind of really kind of graphics. So I was financing it myself. You know, once I went in, and I was determined to do it and do it well. And I was determined to do it on my own. And I didn't want any music consumer to feel that they would play my record, and because it was independently made or produced, feel that they couldn't put my record on and Anita Baker on and feel like they were lessening in quality.
Right.
Not to say that they would have liked mine better or worse, but I didn't want to feel like it's not as good because it is independent, so to speak.
Right.
I wanted to feel that it held up in quality, and I didn't realize until much later, a friend of mine who's another independent artist said something to me that was really profound. He said, you know, Gordon, whenever you release a record, you know, and I've taken long gaps in between my records. He said, you know, it's like there's a benchmark. I said, what do you mean? He said, like, we look at the credits to see, well, who worked on the record, who mixed it, what is the artwork like? Like, you come out with class and elegance, and he said, and it's very inspirational. And I didn't realize that a lot of other independent artists, you know, were emulating, you know, and were inspired, you know, by what I was doing. And it really, it made a huge difference to hear that. Whitney was also pivotal and transformational in my life because that moment inspired me to start vocal coaching other singers. And I do a lot of vocal coaching with singers of all ages. Adults, hobbyists, professionals, touring singers, children. I coach hundreds and hundreds of people of all walks of life. I've done it even in Japan with people with a language barrier. Wow. And because I can also see in people's, you know, in that aura of theirs, you know, where that level of that spark of confidence is, you know, sometimes it's underneath fear, or it's underneath self-deprecation or lack of confidence, but it's in there. It's in everybody, and I can see it, and I can hear it, and I can hear it in the nugget of a voice, where every voice has a sweet spot, and I can see it, I can hear it, I can find it, and I know how to interact, just like Whitney did with me. I know how to interact to build confidence, and it's been a beautiful thing. So thank you for sharing what you did about confidence, and because that's something that I do as an educator as well all the time, and I really enjoy that work a lot. And I've done a lot of that work because 2020, obviously nobody's touring. I've been able to do a lot of that kind of work here in New York with, you know, a few students that still come by because there's enough room in this Bronx. So this is my house, everybody. There's enough room for social distancing, but also on Zoom sessions, we vocal coach and we have a wonderful time.
You got a full piano there, my friend.
Yes.
Well, and where are you? Are you in New Jersey? Are you in Manhattan? Where are you?
No, I'm in Fort Greene, Brooklyn.
Brooklyn. All right. Well,
Brooklyn, yep.
Look out your door. I'm standing right there. Seriously, look out your door.
You are not standing out my door.
That would
stalking.
That would be a little freaky. Yeah. I think I know the answer to this, but I'm dying to ask. How are you with celebrities? Some people, I think, especially when they're people they've been fanning a long time, get super weird.
Sure.
And some of them don't. And you've worked with a ton of them. What do you like with them?
I've come to realize that, you know, they're as diverse as anybody. Celebrities are as diverse as any other group of people, I find. And Some are very warm and friendly. Some are a little bit more standish. I mean, I think like, it's as diverse as any group of people that you would go to. You know what I mean? If you were go as a plus one to a wedding, you find that there are people like, hey, how are you? And then there are people like, who that? So they are not a monolithic group of personalities in and of themselves. I always give celebrities the benefit of the doubt, and that I always lead with warmth and pleasantry and assume that they're coming from the same space. Some celebrities are more, a little bit more standoffish and, a little bit more private, probably. And that's okay. Most have been very, very, very nice. I've mostly had very, very good interactions with, I would say 95% of the celebrities I've ever interacted with. And probably the other 5%, I could feel pain. I would say 90 to 10%. And then the other 10%, it was never a situation, I don't recall ever being in a situation with a celebrity like, oh, I just don't like them, or they think they're all that. It was more like I could really feel like there was some hurt, there was pain, and you can tell when somebody's in pain, if you have that discernment or in heartache or in whatever, and is trying to put on a fabulous gown on top of it. You can feel it, and so I don't think that they're any better than me. I don't think celebrities are any better than me as a human being. I was raised very proud of who I am. I'm very proud of my roots. I'm very proud of my parents. I'm very proud of my grandparents. I'm an immigrant, and my parents came from Jamaica in the late 60s to pursue their American dream and, worked really hard and made a lot of sacrifices. So my brother and I could go to really great schools, public schools like Teaneck Public School as well as Brown. So I'm very proud of who I am. So I don't interact with anybody, celebrity, like that they're any better than me. And I don't look down on anybody. I try to find a sweet spot of where our souls can have a connection and just take it from there. Whatever happens, happens.
Well, you've turned yourself into a celebrity. So I have been stalking you, brother. If you check your analytics, it's me. It was all me. What I'm trying to figure out what level of fame you are. I'm assuming you walk outside your street in Brooklyn and people sing a song to you or people recognize you. How often does that happen?
I think that a lot of people know who I am in my neighborhood, but they don't always show it necessarily. I think that in my neighborhood, a lot of people know me. I'm a member. I've been living in this neighborhood for 21 years now. So I hang out and go to the grocery stores and do everything that I got to do. So I think there are people who may know me, but know that I live in the neighborhood. So they may be kind of like, okay, let's leave him alone. He's in the neighborhood. Because there are other celebrities that I know of who live in the neighborhood, that actors. Not as many musicians, some musicians, but quite a few actors. And there are some that I've met, I don't really know them, but when I see them, I just may wave and I leave them alone because I'm like, they have a life, they got to do what they've got to do. And then there are lots of people who don't know who I am in the neighborhood. And, and I don't assume that anybody knows. I don't ever assume that anybody knows me or doesn't know me. I'm just living in the neighborhood, buying groceries and going to the gym and doing what I got to do and riding my bike like everybody else. And I just, I consider myself a citizen of the USA and an active, member of the community that's just trying to spread love in where I live. I that's important to me too.
Aww.
When I leave the door, I try to be in my best spirit, actually, because who knows that I might just be walking down the street and say hello to somebody and it might uplift their day, because I know that has happened to me. I know there's been times I've been having a bad day and the warmth of a stranger has just uplifted and transcended my soul when I needed it. And so I think that's part of being in a community. And I believe that we as human spirits deserve to honor the higher being, honor God by being kind to our neighbors. You know, I had a big fire. I don't know if you read about that, but in 2016, I had a huge house fire. This very house I burned. It was a very big fire. And I had so much love and kindness bestowed to me. It was astounding by absolute strangers, you know, who just knew. And that is a time when I realized that people really knew that I was the music. Because then some of the firemen are like, oh my God, the music, you're the music guy, huh? We've heard that there's a music guy on the block. You know, and I was like, wow, even the firemen, you know, knew that I was the music guy of the block. People were so kind. Brad, they were absolutely kind. And sometimes you really don't know. Sometimes you're not in a position to experience the real kindness of people until you're in a crisis. And, you know, that time of my life was a very difficult time, you know, being displaced for over 2 years while they rebuilt the house. It was just a difficult time in every way, you know, emotionally. But I don't remember any of the negative. I remember the good. I remember the kindness of people. You know, I really, really, that is what stays with me the most.
Let's go back to celebrity. By the way, I'm glad your house is okay now. And I was just playing with that candle that one time. I'm sorry I lit the whole block on fire. I'm sorry. So one of my favorite cocktail party conversations involves celebrity, and it goes like this. Would you want to be famous? And by famous, I'm like Aretha Franklin famous, like Barack Obama famous, right. Taylor Swift famous, or that's the first question, yes or no. And the second one is, if not, what if you could just turn it on? Like you could try being famous for a couple of weeks, and then we'll just dial you back to whatever you are right now. You're kind of on that trajectory. For you, it's a different question because you've already got some of that. Would you want to be that kind of crazy famous where you could not walk outside your house?
I don't know what that would feel like. I mean, it's not something I can imagine. It's very far. I have no idea what that could feel like. None. I enjoy my life very, very much. I enjoy that I can move around with freedom and ease. So I don't know what that would like. I don't think necessarily that's necessarily bad. Or that it's necessarily good. All I would say is that I think that, and having spent time with some very famous people in my lifetime, including Aretha Franklin and Barack, two of the examples you've mentioned, I think that fame, Oprah said it very astutely. She said, fame doesn't change who you are. It changes how everybody around you acts towards you. That's what she said in the interview. I think that the beauty of fame is that it allows platforms. You can actually use your credibility, your platform, your notoriety to get a bullhorn and speak
right
prayerfully good into the world. You know, that's the great asset and perk of fame. And, you know, there are people like Alicia Keys who I really respect, you know, what she's done as a humanitarian. She's, you know, John Legend, fabulous what those two have done. You know, relatively young people, younger than me, how they've been able to use their fame and really, you know, and as really effective activists. That's a beautiful thing.
Right.
So I think that part of what could be really difficult about fame is just, and I have dealt with that, and I have dealt with that in my level of quote unquote fame. I have experienced situations where I thought that people, you know, loved me for me, and more so to find that it was really more about what I could do for them. And I'm a yes person. Like, you ask me to do something, I 99% of the time say yes. Just like you asked me to, I'm like, yes, come on. I'm really a yes person. If it just doesn't agree with my soul, I don't think it doesn't feel good to me, then I'll say, but I would say 90, in the high 90s of when people usually ask me to do something, I say yes. But I have experienced in my quote unquote level of fame where people have not asked me for what they wanted. So therefore they didn't get what they wanted and then were mad at me that I didn't give it to them when they never asked.
Right. So what's an example? What are we talking about?
Sometimes the expectations when you're quote unquote famous or quote unquote a little bit more well-known, there are higher expectations of you, you know, and sometimes you're not aware of what the expectations are. So you're often in competition with something that you don't even know what it is. And that can be lonely. That can be hurtful. That is something that, you know, I've had to deal with a taste of that and wouldn't want any more of that.
Yeah.
But it would be great to be more famous, quote unquote, because of the more good that I feel I could do in the world, so to speak. That's the only reason I would want to be more famous, so to speak, if that makes any sense.
Well, there's one thing I really love about being famous, and let me explain. I'm not famous, but when I'm at a conference in front of 1,000 people and I rock that audience, right after that, I am very famous inside that hotel. And then I walk out the hotel door and get in an Uber and I'm not famous anymore. But that means I've had this tiny little taste of it. And what I love most about that is two things. One, being able to walk out that door. You know, meaning like, okay, I want to be not famous anymore. Let me just walk outside. But I also love that during those moments, you have a little bit of personal power. And you mentioned when Whitney was encouraging you, and you mentioned that when you're coaching others, you encourage others. When you're that kind of person that they've projected upon Gordon, when you're like, that's Gordon Chambers. I just heard him rock this nightclub. Everybody was screaming. And he just came and told me he's glad to meet me. He told me he can't wait to hear my song. That is a cool bit of increased influence. You talked about your platform. You get a little bit of boost because, at least in their mind, in my case, they think I'm famous. I know you've done that.
Well, you know, to me, Brad, I agree with what you said for that moment. You know, when you get in the Uber and you get in the cab, you know, you go home and you go about your business, and that's a nice thing to be able to do that. But what makes life worthwhile, you know, and really worth living, a life well lived, is the other lives you've been able to touch. That's a worthwhile life. That's a you know, when we're all going to die. And when we die, what will be spoken of at our funeral is not how much money we made or what we, you know, what will be said, what will be, or how famous we were. What will be most remembered is the lives we've touched. And I went to Whitney and Aretha's funerals. I went. And most of what was spoken about at the funerals about them was the lives they touched, you know, and how they touched those lives. I mean, Aretha's funeral, it was amazing. I mean, you had all those speakers and presidents and this and that, but some of the speeches that I remember the most were like, there was a woman who became the mayor of Southfield, which is a Detroit suburb. And she said, Aretha called her one day, just like on the phone, like it's Aretha Franklin. And her sister's like, no, it's not. She said, this is Aretha Franklin. And, you know, I know that you've become mayor of Southfield and I want to have a reception for you at my house and I want to help you. And she said, I just couldn't believe Aretha was calling me. And she was like, yes, I really want to welcome you into your position. And she was like, and she said that she did, and she did it. I mean, Isaiah, who was Isaiah, the famous basketball player, Isaiah played for the Detroit Pistons, said the same thing. Like when I first moved into town, Aretha reached out and just was like, come to the house and befriended me just because I was new in town. So it was just, those stories were really heartwarming. I mean, her nieces and nephews spoke at the funeral. You know, the things that the legacy is, your legacy in life is the things you do for other people. I'm very clear on that, you know, and I'm 51 now. You know, getting in the second half of my life, you know, my grandfather lived to 102, so I live as long as him, as long as my father's father did, then I'm halfway there. And I'm most gratified now at what I can do for others. I mean, that gives me the most joy. It really does.
Aw, you're right. So when people hire me to talk to their business group, this is what we're talking about: emotional and social support. Mm-hmm. And in my case, how to relate that to whatever they're trying to accomplish. But right on.
Yeah.
All right. So changing subjects. You meet a young kid, a kid who's got crazy music skills, or just as an artist, crazy art skills, and says, I'm not sure if I want to go to college. You went to Brown. So what's your takeaway on college as an adult who, you went to an Ivy League. What do you tell these kids?
That's interesting. I've never really been quite asked that question, but I'm sure that question is coming up more and more as college gets more and more expensive, where people are really trying to navigate whether it makes sense or not. I think college is great. You know, college is a time in your life. It's a special time when your job is to learn. You know what I mean? Like, that's your job for 4 years or whatever, you know, that time is. And that time never comes like that again. It does not ever come back. Like, even in the pandemic, I'm gonna like have days when I'm like, I'm gonna read a book. I'm like, Gordon, you've been reading the same damn book for 3 months. You know, like, you don't have the time to finish it. You know, so like, and I remember like in college, we have to read 4 books a week.
Right.
And, you know, like, so I think that like, I would say to that student, if you can afford it, you know, I don't know what that how it's going to affect your financials. But I would say that it's a precious time to learn how to learn and have the luxury of learning being the focus. It's also a great time to discover sort of who you are. I think Brown was amazing because I think the personalities at Brown, the Brown community is some of the most dynamic people. I mean, people from Brown, I find so interesting to talk to, you know, just interesting and interested in many things, you know. So I think you learn to socialize in college. I think you build confidence in college.
Yeah.
You know, because you kind of like assert yourself or establish yourself, whatever your clique or your community is, in a way that can serve you, you know, in a later time in your life. I think it's a beautiful time in your life, if it's a fit, and it's not for everybody. You know, I do have a real concern for colleges. Of course, colleges in the pandemic, that's a whole other topic in general. But I do have a real concern that colleges do have the psychological support and that the students need. I think that a lot of students go to college and are really not doing well, and it's not academic. I think certain pressures come up in college for a lot of people, and they slip under the cracks because they're not getting the psychological support.
Was that your story?
Not at all, but it's a story of many people that I've known, you know, family members and, you know, just other people I've known who, you know, it has happened. So it can happen. It's not. I think it's not, you know,
the kind of the fable, the myth of college is, you know, you're going to meet your best friend. Your first roommate is your best friend forever, and it's going to be so great. And really, college is hard, and not the academics. It's not that easy to go away and figure out a new thing.
No, it's not.
My gut tells me with you, if I said, what did you get out of Brown? My gut says, you told us how important that first job at Essence was, and you ended up doing different things and climbed up that ladder and met all these people. My gut is you wouldn't have had the confidence to pull that off without going to college.
I think you're right. I think that that it absolutely helped me to assert myself at that position at Essence. And I was 20 years old when I graduated Brown. I was young. So I was 20 years old when I went to work at Essence. I remember introducing myself to the CEO of the company. I said, Mr. Lewis, I just wanted to introduce myself because I'm a full-time employee. I'm not one of the college interns. And he looked at me like, who the fuck are you? But kind of like in a sweet, kind way. But, it taught me to assert myself and to just definitely. I absolutely agree.
How is it that you started college at age 16?
Yeah, I did start when I was 16. So when I graduated, when I was 20. Yep.
But how did that happen? Most 16-year-olds are not starting college.
I skipped a grade, so I was 16.
Gordon Chambers, smarty pants. Dude, thank you so much for your time. I am going to ask you about hope, but I just want to tell you, when I was at Brown, I started at a different college. I started at Trinity University in Texas and did my last 2 years at Brown, which is when I met you. And the best thing for me about Brown easily was you and those other musicians we played with. Because I was playing, I was deep into it, but when I got to Brown, suddenly I'm surrounded by these people that were amazing and knew things that I didn't know and just had it in their heart in ways that I'm like, I'm still not there. What are you talking about? And then I got to play with you, and my learning curve during those 2 years was insane. But looking back, I would just about give an arm to sit behind you and play God Bless His Child. Oh, I'd kill to hear you here. I've been looking. I cannot find a recording of that. My Funny Valentine. Anything that we played. I would love to sit behind you.
Well, that day you never know will come again. But, since you asked, I'm going to just leave it here. We're just going to close this interview out.
Wait, Gordon, I know what you're going to do. Tell me what gives you hope. Gordon Chambers, singer, songwriter, award-winning musician. What gives you hope?
What gives me hope is God. Getting up every day and knowing that God gave me life and saved my life. I could have died many times. I've had near-death experiences. So God has given me the gift of life daily, and it's another chance to glorify Him and to touch all His children here on earth. And that's really what gives me hope, just knowing that. I'm going to be right back, and then you keep the people occupied. I'll be right back, and then we'll have some hope. How about that? Give me 1 second.
I can't wait. All right, so if you are with me now, this is singer-songwriter Gordon Chambers. I went to college with Gordon, and I thought he was an amazing person then, but then kind of prepping for this interview, I had the good luck to go and stalk him, and I've been listening to his albums. He's got 3 of them under his own name, and they're fantastic. I feel like I've had him on autoplay for the last 3 months or 3 weeks. And honestly, I'd only heard his first one beforehand. So super cool. One of my favorite memories of him was he could rock an audience. I mean, he had that ability, not just musically, but with his charisma to bring up any audience. And it was so fun to sit on the drum set behind him. But really, I think my favorite memories are him playing ballads. And he could do My Funny Valentine like nobody else. And he's gone to check on something. I'm dying to see what he pulls up. You know that one of my interests is emotional and social support as it relates to performance. And hearing that Gordon Chambers was writing all these songs, I'm talking about you, Gordon, writing all these songs for all these stars, and had every indication in the world that he had it, whatever that it is. But that it still needed somebody he looked up to, Whitney Houston, to push him over and say, "You're good enough. Get out there and sing." That was nice for me to hear. Gordon.
I think this song kind of been talking about celebrity. We've also been talking about spirituality.
Yep.
So the song kind of fits. Them that God shall get, them that's not shall lose. So the Bible says, and it still is news. Your mama may have, Papa he may have, but God bless the child that's got his own. I have got my own. So the strong get more, and the big ones they pay. Empty pockets don't ever make a grave. Your mama, she may have, Papa, he may have, but God bless the child that's got his own. That's got his own. Money you got, lots of phony friends crowding around your door. When the spending is, the pandemic comes. So glad that they don't come around. No. Relations they begin, cross the brother and such. You can help yourself. Child, don't you take too much. You know that your mama, she may have, Papa, he may have, but God bless the child that's got his own. That's got his own.
Oh, my heart needed that, Gordon.
Well, somebody needed it. Somebody listening to this needs it. And I hope that this conversation has uplifted somebody to get their own, whatever it is. Go get it. Just go after it. Get it. God gave you that desire, not for you to fail, but for you to glorify him. Go get it. Go get your own. Make him proud. Whoever the higher being is to you, this little light of mine, I always loved that song as a child. I'm going to let it shine. So I hope this song and this conversation is helping somebody somewhere in this difficult time we're in to shine. So Brad, thank you for inviting me to have it. And ladies and gentlemen, if you want to know more about me, visit GordonChambers.com. And my 4 solo albums, Introducing Gordon Chambers, Love Stories, Sincere and Surrender, are available on all digital platforms. And if you want a singing lesson, contact me on Facebook or Instagram. All of those ways, it's Gordon Chambers. We do virtual lessons. And you can also call me at 212-696-6774, or you can email me at Gordon, Gordon, at GordonChambers.com. And that's me in a nutshell. Stay in touch. Thank you for having me, Brett. Peace.
Stay with me, Gordon. Gordon Chambers says, go get it. Yes.
Get it.